This is eCoffee with Experts, where marketers and founders share what's actually working in SEO, AI, and digital growth. Grab your coffee and fuel your mind as we chat with top minds about their wins, struggles, and lessons you won't find in a blog post. Brought to you by Digital Web Solutions, we bring real talk to help you grow your business, one episode at a time. Let's get started.
Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to your show, eCoffee with Experts. This is your host, Ranmay here. And today we have got a very special guest, who is Jean, who is the director of SEO at AT&T with us. Hey, Jean, how's it going?
It's going absolutely amazing. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Jean, before we move any forward, why don't we take a step back, understand a bit more about your journey and how did you land up in the SEO, digital marketing space? Because when we all were growing, there was no industry such as SEO, right? So how did
That's
it
right.
all start? How come you landed up in the space? And obviously a bit about your journey in terms of to now becoming the director of SEO at a global enterprise like AT&T.
So I'll give you the short version only because I've been in the SEO space for approximately 24 years-ish, right? And to give you an indication, when I started, there was no Google. It was the old days of AltaVista, GoTo.com, and Ask Jeeves and whatnot. And I started, honestly, by reading a book one day. And I forget the name of the book. It's lost to the ages. But it was a book that talked specifically about, digital marketing. And one of the strategies was, you can influence search engines by doing certain things. At the time, it was completely black hat. I'm talking white on white text. I'm talking hundreds of variations of words. But I grew from there because I really understood. Well, no, I didn't understand it at the time, but I felt that this was the future. Right. I felt that digital marketing was something that was interesting. And kind of to take a step back, I started as a developer. But I realized that I was the worst developer ever. And I wasn't going to do any development. So I decided, well, I'm going to do computers, but I'm going to do something else in computers, which is going to be that. So I began my career in Montreal, Canada. At the time, Montreal was one of the biggest hubs for the online gaming space. Right, we hosted a lot of online casinos and online sports books, so that's where I kind of started in the business. One of the hardest industries, believe it or not, from the start. And I decided eventually to kind of learn more and actually do this for real. And I was lucky enough to get a job in the UK, and I worked for a company called Coral. It's called coral.co.uk. Coral Eurobet, it was called at the time, which was, the third biggest bookmaker in the UK.
Okay.
And I kind of spent approximately almost 3 years in England, south of London, in a small town called Woking. And as a Canadian kid in England, man, I'll tell you, the food was terrible. I had lots of great times watching lots of great football. I got introduced to cricket, which I now love. And I kind of moved back afterwards from there back to Canada. And I worked for one of the biggest publishers in Canada, which is Canoe. They had multiple newspapers, multiple portals, and hundreds of websites. And I was working in SEO, paid search, and affiliate marketing there. So I did a little bit of time. And at the same time, my wife, bless her, she's from Miami. And she was like, Canada is the worst because it's so cold. And she was like, look, we need to make a change. And so we decided to move to Miami, right? Because that's where she's from. And we figured, oh yeah, this is a great place. So I went to Miami, spent, several years bouncing around between different small and medium businesses. And eventually I landed in Atlanta, and that's where I started at AT&T. This was 2017. I'll tell everybody out there that when I started at AT&T, I was a contractor that was working for a contractor underneath a contractor, right? I was literally the guy that did all the work that no one wanted to do. And that time, it was very challenging for me. I felt like, oh my God, am I ever going to be able to grow in this space? But I was able to, through time and lots of positivity, build myself into a person that could actually achieve things. And I think that that's kind of the main thing, is being able to execute, being able to show results in this space is massively difficult. And, from AT&T at that time, I moved to Verizon. And at Verizon, I spent a little bit of time in their internal search department, but moved in SEO. And in SEO, I literally stood up the team. like from nothing. And we built a whole team at Verizon, which I mean, it was amazing time, I think. And but eventually, I was called upon. Actually, I wasn't called upon. I answered an email that says, "Hey man, do you want a job at AT&T?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" So that's where I am now. I've been here for the past 4 years, and I'm definitely very happy here.
Brilliant, brilliant. Quite a journey, I must say, Gene. And
Around the world.
ah, and around quite a few job roles, right? So
Yep.
you're a hustler, man. So yeah, Gene. Now leading SEO at AT&T. How do you prioritize initiatives across millions of pages, right, while ensuring measurable business impact?
That's actually really difficult. And the reason why it's very difficult is because the impact isn't always direct. So,
Yeah.
what I've done during the past 3 years is really try to make SEO into something that's foundational. And what that means in kind of our lingo is the structure of the website should be based on SEO practices. And what that allows us to do is it allows us the flexibility to do the hygiene work. It allows us the flexibility to take on the tasks that might not be specifically measurable while still building a backlog of items that are going to grow the business. So it took a very long time to explain that to the business and kind of build what I would call the mentality of SEO as foundational. But now that we have it, it's extremely important that we continue both measuring hygiene and measuring growth. And the way that I measure hygiene is the absence of a negative. And I know my analysts out there are going to say, Gene, absence of negative, what the hell you're. But things go wrong all the time. Measuring how they go wrong and the impact of them potentially can technically be a positive. So I'll give a great example of, let's say, a page that goes no index out of nowhere. We don't know who did it. It happened. Well, there's an impact. But that impact isn't felt today, it isn't felt right now, but it's going to be felt eventually. And we can, through this view of measuring the negative, explain the fact that we should have invested in ensuring that this was done correctly rather than take the hit on the negative. And that becomes a positive. So it's very, I mean, it's esoteric in its, application sometimes, but really explaining the negative allows us to really have something that we can measure with rather than saying,
Yeah.
oh, well, it just has to be done.
And you have always laid strong emphasis on data-driven SEO and product integrations, right? So
Yes.
how you kind of translate technical metrics into decisions that resonate with executives and stakeholders, because that is not an easy thing to do, especially at an enterprise level business.
Yes. And the way that I try to make that translation, and I think that that's the word that I'll use for this translation, is we use clear metrics. And our clear metric is only one thing, and that's, are we making money? Right. And if we always boil things down to the one metric of either sales, conversions, or whichever metric that is actually translated into money, all of the multiple parts within the change log or the epics or the features or the stories, all of those things kind of multiply into one entity that you can then say becomes sales. And it's very difficult for things that are not sales related. So if you're talking, let's say, I'll give a great example. The AT&T website is massively e-commerce, but it's also massively support. So we support our customers in a giant way. So
Yeah.
how can we make changes to supporting our customers? Well, we equate that with not losing customers. So again, it's that mentality of the negative can become a positive as long as you work towards reducing the negative. So my view is very focused on translating all actions into sales or a simpler metric. And again, I don't want to say that our leadership can't understand it. They can understand it, but we don't want to be trapped in clicks, impressions, positions. We don't want to talk about that, right? We don't want that leads to all kinds of confusion. We want to be very clear that this change is going to lead to sales. Now, how is it going to lead to it? We're going to explain it. When is it going to lead to it? We're going to figure that out, but it's going to lead to sales. And as long as we have a very, I wouldn't say clear, but a path towards sales, it makes it much easier to have a conversation with leadership.
Absolutely. And with all the AI storm that is there, since last couple of years, in fact, last 6 8 months, we have seen a lot of evolution in the AI space, right? So AI LLMs, generative engines are literally reshaping search. How have you incorporated these technologies into AT&T's SEO while maintaining quality and trust?
So that's I think is really important. And I think that this is something that a lot of us SEOs we're very nervous about. And again, I can feel the nervousness on LinkedIn every single day, right? SEO is dead, SEO is alive, GEO is here, AEO is there. It's the nervousness is there. And my view is the models, actually not the models, the technology itself can help us. If you think about the base of the technology, it can help us do our job better when it comes to doing the job. But when it comes to interacting with the models, the interaction models aren't 100% mature yet. We don't have that clear, what I would call search console on OpenAI, right? We don't have a very definitive view in analytics that says a person did a search or a person had a conversation with Perplexity and did this. So because of this lack of information, we're almost in a space where we have to be very prepared to understand what's going to happen, but we also have to try things. And I read every single day amazing case studies of people that are trying different things, that are using different ways to build their citations, to build their pages, and that are seeing results. And my personal view is I think that those models in the future will be massively important. And as folks that are kind of the de facto webmasters of the kind of sites now, it's important for us to understand them. But I leave you with one caveat. The day that my mom says, "Oh, I was on ChatGPT and I bought a car," that day I'll say, "Yeah, those models are ready to go." But until then, it's going to take a very long time until the usage becomes to a point where mass market behaviors are going to change. So we still have to deal with Google till then.
Absolutely, absolutely. And talking about Google's, and then you also mentioned one interesting point about SEO being dead, alive. Similar topic, we kind of fear every now and then backlinks is dead, not going to work anymore, not a Google ranking factor and stuff. So, what is your take on backlinks and domain authority? How central is it for large brands like yourself? And what are your link building strategies?
The best way that I can answer that is by saying that I've been in a lot of massively competitive industries. And in very, 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 very competitive industries, like let's say dating, let's say gaming, you need to build out a backlink profile that's very different than more branded type of e-commerce websites. So what I mean by that is there's opportunities in spaces like gaming to build links outside of your space that are going to be relevant and that might generate some kind of value. For a website like AT&T with the velocity of links that it has, and I use the word velocity like in very deliberate word because we generate massive amounts of links regardless of what we do. There's velocity behind a website like AT&T. And those links that are generated organically, either through the news, either through an outage, either through, a new device, those links support a lot of the work of the brand. And what we do at a company like AT&T is I won't say that we don't focus on links, but what we do is we're very selective about what type of links we would go after and who we would work with to go get those links. The reason for is because again, as a very important brand, everything that we do is being watched at all times. So I could not, like, if I sent an email to some person with a blog, that email is going to be posted on Reddit, and then somebody's going to say, "Hey, look, this Gene from AT sent me a link request." Yeah, I can't do that. That's why for us, we have to be very deliberate with who we work with, who our partners are. And we focus mostly on how PR and brand is reflected in links.
And now we are in 2025, Gene, almost, kind of, and getting in
Almost
the last
26.
quarter. From what has happened in the last 9 months or so, where do you think are we heading with all of this AI trends, search trends, and all the different LLMs kind of coming up? Where do you think are we heading? How is 2026 going to be? I know hard to predict, but what is your take on this?
I mean, I say always follow the money. right? And the money right now is in AI, it's in LLM, and any person with a great AI idea can raise $100 gajillion anytime.
Right.
But it's going to take time for them to really pick up mass market appeal. It's going to take a lot of work from those models, but I believe that that work can happen and it will happen over time. There will be a space for AI search, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there will be no more web search, right? So we have many discussions within SEO team about how we should approach this. And then there's some doom and gloomers that are like, let's just delete the website and send all of our data to OpenAI. We'll build an agent. No, we're not there yet, right? So we still need apps. We still need websites. We still need to feature what I call media in this way, but the models will take a space. What space? That's where we were not sure. It could take a 10%, maybe 15, 20% share. Who knows? But we right now it's too early to tell. But where the money is saying that they're going to take a space, and we just have to be ready for that space that they're going to take.
Absolutely, Gene. Great. Yeah, this has been a brilliant conversation, Gene, and some wonderful points that you've raised, and such a journey you have had. Thank you so much once again for taking out time to do this with us. Really appreciate it, man.
You're very welcome. It's been my pleasure.